Good evening, sweetheart. It's Maggie. Come sit with me. Let's make this night a gentler one. The light beside my chair has been on for a little while now. Not bright, not loud, just that quiet, steady amber it seems to choose on December evenings when the rain has already decided it's not going anywhere. Seattle's in one of her soft moods tonight, the kind of rain that doesn't race down the glass, doesn't slam against the siding, just arrives in small, patient threads that sound more like someone thinking out loud than anyone making a scene. I brought my tea over a few minutes ago, chamomile, with that thin ribbon of honey I can never pour in a straight line. At 63, my hands have made peace with being expressive. The room is dim, intentionally so. The overhead light is off. The kitchen light is off. Just this lamp, right here beside my chair, casting that slow, golden circle across the rug and up the side of the bookshelf. Lily is at my feet, of course. She's curled into her usual little comma shape, tail tucked, paws folded, like a small sentence resting at the end of the day. Her breathing is almost in time with the rain. Some creatures just know how to belong to a night. And here I am in my chair, the chair that holds more of my shape than I'd like to admit. The chair that has watched more evenings than any clock ever could. You know, there's a funny little secret about this chair. It looks perfectly calm, just sitting here, soft and worn in all the right places, as if all it has ever done is patiently wait to hold a tired woman and a sleepy dog. But the truth is, there have been nights when I've walked past it 3 or 4 times before I let myself sit down. Maybe you know that feeling too. Earlier this evening, I was still in the kitchen, putting the last dish into the rack, folding the same dish towel twice more than it needed, pretending I was busy with something important. On the counter, my PSE bill was sitting under a magnet, face down, because I'd already paid it, and I didn't feel like staring at the numbers again. Next to it, a little stack of mail, a coupon packet from the grocery store, a brochure for some joint supplements that looked a little too interested in my knees, and a postcard from Dorothy, even though she lives 3 houses down. She says it makes the mailman feel useful. Earlier in the day, USPS left everything in a crooked line on my doormat, and I remember thinking, well, someone's having an abstract art phase. All of it, the bill, the brochures, the dishes, the little red light blinking on the phone, telling me Emily called and I missed her by 15 minutes. All of it felt easier to handle than the one thing waiting for me in here. This chair. You'd think at this age I'd be grateful to sit down whenever I can. And don't get me wrong, my knees are loyal, but they also file anonymous complaints on cold evenings. But there's something about the moment we finally sit at the end of the day, isn't there? The body stops, the hands quiet, and suddenly every thought that was waiting in the hallway rushes in and says, "Ah, good. You're not moving now. We'd like to talk." For some of us, that's the hardest part of the night. Not the dark, not the weather, just the sitting. You might have your own version of this chair. Maybe it's the corner of your sofa, the side of your bed, the old recliner in the living room that squeaks every time you breathe. From the outside, it's just furniture, but to your heart, it's the place where the day finally catches up, where the questions you've been avoiding all afternoon pull up a chair of their own. There have been nights, sweetheart, when I have stood right there in the doorway to this room, hands still damp from washing dishes, and I've looked at this chair the way you might look at an old friend you're not sure you're ready to be honest with. Part of me thinking, if I sit down, everything I've been holding at arm's length is going to sit down with me. Memories, worries, the way the house sounds different now than it did in 1995, the way December feels different when there are fewer people under the same roof. So I stall. I wipe a counter that's already clean. I refold a towel that's already straight. I check the same envelope twice, just to make sure I really did pay the bill. I tell myself I'm being productive, but really, I'm just dancing around the moment my body knows has to come anyway. The moment when I finally sit down and the night sits down with me. At 63, I've gotten just old enough to catch myself in that little dance and say out loud, "Maggie, the chair is not hunting you. It's just waiting, quietly, patiently, like it has all the time in the world. Tonight, I decided I didn't want to keep it waiting any longer. I turned off the kitchen light. The hallway went soft and shadowy, just that thin ribbon of lamplight from this room spilling across the floor like a path someone had laid out ahead of me. Lily heard me move and lifted her head, those eyebrows of hers asking 3 questions at once. Are we going to the chair now? Is it time for the quiet? Will there be crumbs? I told her the answer to at least one of those was yes. And then, step by step, I walked that short distance from the doorway to this old cushion, a distance I've walked thousands of times, but tonight I let it mean something a little different. Not, I'm giving up and letting the day overwhelm me, but I'm choosing a place to let the day set itself down. A fabric rose up gently around my hips, like it always does, remembering exactly where I've been all these years. The lamp warmed the side of my face. Lily circled once, then twice, and folded herself back against my foot with that tiny sigh that sounds very much like approval. And sitting here with the rain in the window, the tea at my side, and this chair holding every ounce of weight I've brought to it, I felt something I didn't always feel in this spot. Not just tired, not just braced for the oncoming flood of thoughts, but invited, as if the night was saying, let me be gentle for you, just for a while. You've been standing all day inside your own worries. Come sit where they don't get to be the only ones in the room. You know, we don't talk about this very often, but I think for a lot of us, it isn't the house we're afraid of, or the darkness, or even the quiet. It's that feeling of lowering ourselves into a chair and waiting to see what shows up beside us. Old memories, new test results, bills, voices that are gone, phone calls that didn't come. The heart can make a lot of noise when the body finally stops moving. But what if, just for tonight, the chair could help hold some of that noise for us, instead of feeling like the place where it all falls apart? That's what I want to sit with you in this evening. Not a big lesson, Not a grand solution, just this quiet experiment. What happens when we treat our evening chair, or the side of our bed, or that one spot on the sofa, not as a trap for lonely thoughts, but as a friend who's been waiting all day to help us set them down. So, if you have your own chair nearby, or any place you usually end up at the end of the day, you're welcome to imagine you're bringing it a little closer to mine. 2 chairs, 2 homes, 2 tired hearts, and 1 quiet night trying its very best to be kind to us both. From here, I'll tell you how this old chair and I learned to do that for each other over the years. How it went from being the hardest place to sit down to being the place that reminds me I'm not facing the evening alone. We'll take it slowly, right here, beside the lamp, with the rain on the window and the gentle weight of this December night settling around us. My hand is resting on the arm of the chair as I talk to you. It does that without my thinking about it now. Finds the same patch of fabric it's been reaching for since this chair first arrived in my life. The cloth is smoother there, a little darker, a little more honest about how many evenings it has listened to. Sometimes I think if you pressed your ear against this old armrest, you could hear all the winters it survived with me. This chair didn't start out as anything special. It came from a furniture store off a busy road in 1995. One of those places with fluorescent lights that make every couch look a little more tired than it really is. Back then, we weren't shopping for magic. We were just shopping for somewhere to sit down after long days. He wanted leather. Of course he did. Easy to wipe, he said. Strong, will last longer. I wanted fabric. Warm, I told him. Soft, won't squeak every time you breathe. We went up and down the aisles, sitting, standing, pretending we knew what our backs would appreciate 10 years later. Every time he sat in a leather chair, he'd lean back like a king and then grimace just a little when it let out that sticky little sigh. I tried not to smile. We found this one near the middle. Not much to look at then. Just a simple fabric chair, soft arms, a back that curved the way our spines still did at the time, and a color somewhere between oatmeal and the inside of a winter coat. The tag said stone. I remember thinking, oh, that's optimistic. Stones don't usually sag the way chairs do. He sat down first, testing it like a man interviews an employee, leaning back, leaning forward, pressing his hands into the arms, shifting his weight left and right. Then he looked at me with that little half smile I knew very well and said, "It doesn't squeak." That was his way of saying, "You were right, and I am going to pretend this was my idea." We brought it home in the back of a borrowed truck. Seattle was in one of her rainy moods then, too. I remember the way we struggled through the front door of our old duplex, him insisting on taking the heavier side, and me insisting that he was being dramatic. We got stuck in the hallway once, laughing in that tired, nervous way you laugh when you're not sure if the thing you butter will even fit into the life you already have. But it did. We nudged it into the corner by the window, exactly where my lamp is now, angled just so, enough to see the TV if we wanted, enough to watch the rain if we didn't. The first night, the cushion was still firm. We sat together on the edge and slowly sank back, the way you might test the temperature of new water. He made a comment about how the springs were promising. I said the fabric felt like it knew how to keep secrets. He laughed at that, but I wasn't joking. Even then, something in me suspected this chair was going to learn more about our evenings than any neighbor would. In those days, the chair wasn't mine. It was ours. He'd sit here after dinner with the newspaper or the mail, glasses slipping down his nose the way they always did when he pretended not to be tired. Sometimes I'd perch on the arm for a minute, reading him a line from a letter or pointing out a recipe I wanted to try and probably wouldn't. On rainy nights, the lamplight would fall exactly across his hands as he folded the paper, just so. And I'd watch the way his fingers moved, careful with the pages, rough with everything else in his life, except the people he loved. I can still see it if I close my eyes, the way the ink would smudge on his thumb, the little crease between his brows when he hit a story that worried him. the way the whole chair would give a soft, surprised huff when he finally gave in and let himself doze off. The paper would slide from his fingers, hit the rug with a soft flutter, and he'd startle awake just long enough to say, "I wasn't sleeping," as if the chair had accused him. We spent a lot of unremarkable nights in this very spot. News at 6, soup on chilly evenings, half-finished conversations about next month's bills or where to put the Christmas tree this year. Nothing movie-worthy, as people say. But that's the thing about chairs. They don't remember the fireworks. They remember where your weight was night after night when you were too tired to perform. Later, when Emily was older, this chair became her territory too. She'd come home from school on wet afternoons, drop her backpack with a sigh big enough for 3 people, and flop down sideways, her legs thrown over one arm, her head pressed into the other, as if the poor chair were a question she didn't know how to answer. I'd be at the kitchen counter, cutting vegetables, pretending not to listen as she started talking to the ceiling about teachers who didn't understand, friends who suddenly decided to be enemies, the whole complicated weather of a teenage heart. The chair held all of that too. Every dramatic sigh, every eye roll, every whispered, "I don't know what I'm doing, Mom." Sometimes when she was little, she'd fall asleep here before we could convince her to go to bed. Her socks half off, book on the floor, the lamplight painting a small golden square across her cheek. We'd turn the TV down, we'd talk softer, and the chair would become, for a while, a kind of small boat carrying her out into whatever dreams 12-year-olds have on rainy school nights. Holidays changed it again. At Thanksgiving, the chair wore whatever someone spilled on it. Gravy one year, cranberry sauce the next. A mysterious stain we never quite identified, but blamed on the dog. At Christmas, I'd drape a faded red blanket over the back, and the whole corner would glow like it was trying out for a postcard. Friends would come over, fill the room with too many shoes and too much laughter, and someone else would always end up in this chair. Dorothy, telling a story she'd already told twice. Frank, falling asleep with one hand in a bowl of peanuts. Or one of the neighbors, cradling a paper plate full of cookies they promised they'd only nibble. The chair absorbed all of it, the crumbs, the jokes, never seemed to mind. It just kept doing its quiet job, holding up whoever trusted it enough to lean back. Then, of course, time did what time does. People moved into different seasons. Some conversations stopped mid-sentence and never quite found their way back. The house grew a little quieter. The chair did not move. I remember the first winter. It was just me and this cushion most nights. The lamp's light fell exactly the same way, but there was more of it. It spread farther across the fabric because there was more fabric to cover. The space beside me on the chair, the place where a newspaper once wrinkled, where a teenage leg once draped, where a friend's hand once rested, was suddenly only fabric again. Not a story, not a person, just cloth. Or at least that's how it felt at first. I would sit a little closer to one arm, as if I were making room for someone else, even though no one else was coming in. You know that feeling, maybe, of automatically leaving space for someone who no longer needs it. At the time, I thought the chair itself had become the reminder, the empty place, the proof that there used to be more voices in this room. But as the years have worn on, and this fabric has grown softer under my hands, I've started to see it a little differently. This chair is not a monument to what I lost. It's a witness to everything that was real enough to leave its mark. Every laugh, every argument about nothing, every quiet apology made with a cup of tea instead of words. All of that is here, held inside the way the cushion gives when I sit down now. So when I tell you I sometimes walk past it at the end of the day, it isn't because this chair is my enemy. It's because it knows too much. It remembers too well. And some nights, my heart thinks it doesn't want to remember with it. But then, on evenings like this one, with the rain on the window and your quiet company on the other side of the screen, I sit here, place my hand on this worn patch of fabric, and realize that this chair has never once demanded that I be brave, or cheerful, or wise. It has only ever asked one thing of me. Let me hold what you bring, the joy, the sorrow, the long, ordinary days no one else sees. And tonight, as we continue together, I'd like to show you how this simple, quiet piece of my December home became less of a reminder of who is gone and more of a companion for the woman who is still here, the woman who sits in it, the woman who, some nights, is you. There was a night, not so long ago, when this chair and I almost missed each other. A Thursday, I think. The kind of Thursday that feels longer than it technically is. You know the kind. Nothing terrible happens. Nothing wonderful either. Just a steady shuffle of small responsibilities and slightly worrying envelopes. That morning, there had been a letter from the clinic. Just a routine follow-up, the kind that's printed on very calm paper with very calm words that still somehow manage to unsettle you all day long. Everything is fine, but let's have another look. I've learned over the years that fine can be a surprisingly noisy word. So I did what people my age have become experts at. I put the letter on the corner of the counter, on top of the grocery list, and I did my best to have a normal day around it. The day obliged. I made oatmeal that stuck to the pot a little too enthusiastically. I talked to Dorothy over the fence about whether the new mailman has a secret life as a race car driver based on how quickly he gets down the street. I watered the bonsai with slightly more ceremony than strictly necessary, apologizing to it for every over and under watering incident it has endured in our relationship. The rain came and went in that on-off rhythm Seattle loves so much, never fully committing to one mood. By late afternoon, I'd washed the breakfast dishes, folded the laundry, and collected a small family of receipts from the bottom of my purse that I absolutely did not need, but somehow couldn't throw away yet. All very ordinary, all carefully busy, because somewhere underneath all of it, I knew what was waiting for me at the end of the day. Not the letter, not the phone call I'd make tomorrow to schedule whatever needed scheduling, but the moment, right here, by this lamp, in this chair, when the house would grow quiet and my mind would stop letting me pretend I wasn't thinking about it. So I stretched the day as thin as it would allow. I wiped the counter 3 separate times, once after lunch, once after tea, once for reasons known only to whatever part of me believes sparkling counters protect people. I reorganized the little bowl where I keep my keys, as if key placement has ever changed a test result. I even rearranged a few books on the shelf behind me, turning 1 or 2 face out, like shopkeepers do with items they're particularly fond of. If anyone had filmed it, you would have thought I was preparing for a visit from an especially fussy guest. But the guest wasn't a person. It was evening, And evening has a way of arriving right on time, whether you're ready or not. By the time the sky outside had smudged itself into that deep Seattle gray that isn't quite night, but definitely not afternoon anymore, I could feel it. That quiet pull from this corner of the room. The lamp was already on, of course. I almost never wait until dark to turn it on. There's something about that little circle of warm light that makes the rest of the day feel softer as it leaves. But that evening, I stood in the doorway with the dish towel still in my hands, and for a moment I just froze. I could see the chair, the way the cushion remembered my shape, the slight tilt of the pillow I keep at my back, the blanket folded across one arm, waiting for knees that argue with December. And I thought, if I sit down, the worry will sit with me. Maybe you've had a version of that exact thought. If I lie down, I'll start thinking about everything. If I turn off the TV, my head will get louder. If I stop moving, the feelings will catch up. So instead of walking those last few steps to the chair, I turned left into the kitchen. Again, I straightened the stack of mail. I moved the clinic letter 1 inch to the right, as if that would adjust the outcome in some small cosmic way. I opened the fridge, looked at a container of leftover soup, and closed it again without taking anything out. I wiped an invisible spot off the stove. I must have done this little circuit: fridge, counter, mail, sink, 3 or 4 times before I caught myself mid-loop. Somewhere between the second and third unnecessary swipe of the dish towel, I heard my own voice in my head say, "Maggie, what exactly are you trying to outrun in this 7-step kitchen?" I set the towel down, not folded, not perfect, just down, and for a moment I stood perfectly still on the cool tile floor, listening, not to the rain, not to the refrigerator's quiet hum, to that other sound, the one just beneath all the rest, the quickened little heartbeat of a woman who is afraid of sitting down with her own thoughts. It surprised me, not that I was worried. That much was obvious. What surprised me was that after all these years, after all the Decembers I've lived through, I could still be that hesitant to meet myself in a chair. I thought of you then, actually, of whoever might be listening to me someday on a night when you are doing your own version of the kitchen dance, Linger here, straighten that, check the window, anything but sit. And a small, unexpected tenderness rose up right behind my ribs, like the part of me that is still someone's mother wanted to put a hand on my own shoulder and yours and say, okay, this is hard, but we can walk to the chair together. So I turned away from the counter, away from the letter, and faced the narrow strip of hallway that leads back into this room. From the doorway, the lamplight looked softer than the last time I'd glanced in. It spilled across the floor in one long golden shape, like an invitation instead of a spotlight. Lily, ever the expert in reading my body language, appeared from her usual post near the front door, head tilted, ears slightly raised, as if asking, "Are we going to the place where you finally sit down?" So I walked slowly, not because my knees demanded it, although they always cast a vote, but because I wanted to feel every step, the shift from tile to wood, the way the house's tiny creaks changed tone as I moved from one room to the next, the growing warmth on the side of my cheek as I stepped fully into the lamplight. For once, I didn't try to distract myself on the way. No straightening pictures, no pausing to adjust the thermostat by 1 degree in either direction. Just walking, just arriving. When I finally sat down, the cushion let out that familiar, soft sigh, as if it had been holding its breath this whole time too. I leaned back into it and let my shoulders drop, an inch, maybe 2, from where they'd been all day. Lily circled once at my feet, then settled with her back pressed gently against my ankle, her warmth spilling into my skin like a small, wordless reassurance. Of course, as soon as my body got still, my brain cleared its throat. Thoughts lined up politely and not so politely to present their cases. What if this? What if that? A list of remember whens from past doctor's visits. A catalog of everyone I've ever known who went through something similar. A few completely unhelpful imaginary scenarios my mind likes to play for no one's benefit at all. For a moment, I felt that old panic, that sense that I had made a mistake by sitting down, that the chair had become the place where worry came to stretch out and get comfortable. My instinct was to pop right back up, to go find another dish to rinse, another surface to wipe. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the warmth of the cushion holding my back. Maybe it was the weight of Lily anchoring my feet. Maybe it was simply the fact that I was tired of running laps between my kitchen and my own fears. Whatever it was, I stayed. And then, very quietly, almost shyly, a new thought showed up in the middle of all the noisy ones. What if the problem isn't the chair? What if the problem is that I've been asking this one small square of fabric to hold my whole day without any help? I looked at the empty space next to me, the place where someone else used to sit, where a newspaper used to crinkle, where a teenage leg used to kick idly at the air. And I imagined, just for a moment, that every worry in my head was being offered a seat right there, instead of all of them trying to crowd onto my chest at once. It sounds silly, I know. 63 and negotiating seating arrangements with my own anxiety. But it helped. It really did. I pictured the biggest ones, the words from the letter, the memory of past waiting rooms, moving gently out of my rib cage and sitting down on the cushion beside me, like nervous guests at a quiet gathering. They were still there. They hadn't vanished, but they were not on top of me. They were next to me, held up by the same springs and fabric that were supporting me. The chair in that moment became big enough for both of us, the woman and her worry. As I sat there, breathing in that small shift, I realized this is something any of us can practice. We don't have to fight the thoughts. We don't have to pretend we don't have them. We can simply invite them to sit a little to the side, on the armrest, on the pillow, on the quiet space next to us, and let the chair help carry their weight for a while. Tonight, as the rain softens and the lamplight wraps itself around this room, I'm sitting here with my thoughts beside me, not crushing me. And in the next breath, I'd like to tell you about a winter when this very chair held far more than one evening's worry, when it helped me through a season I wasn't sure I would be able to sit through at all. But I did. And if I did, there's a good chance, sweetheart, you can sit through your season too. Not alone. Not really. Not while there is a chair, a lamp, a bit of rain, and a quiet like this one, trying its best to be gentle with you. was a winter a few years ago when I honestly thought this chair might swallow me whole. Not literally, of course. The legs are sturdy, the springs are tired but faithful. No, it was the season that felt like it might pull me under. The chair was just the place I kept landing when I didn't know where else to stand. It was the first December after he was gone. The mail that year seemed too enthusiastic. Catalogs I hadn't asked for. Holiday cards with cheerful families in matching sweaters. Envelopes with red lettering reminding me to celebrate big, as if the whole world had agreed to speak in capital letters while I was learning how to whisper again. The house behaved differently that winter too. Same walls, same windows, same old heater with its little grumbles and sighs, but without his shoes by the door, without his jacket on the hook. Every sound felt slightly off-key. In the evenings, I'd turn on the lamp, make myself a small bowl of soup, and then stand in the middle of the living room, as if I'd forgotten what the furniture was for. The chair was still in its corner by the window, blanket draped, pillow waiting, the fabric a shade softer than the year before. You'd think it would have felt comforting, like a friend who hadn't moved an inch in my absence. But in those first weeks, all I could see was the emptiness beside me, the invisible outline of someone who should have been here, reclining back, making quiet comments about the weather report, pretending not to fall asleep 10 minutes into the movie. So I did what a lot of us do when something reminds us too sharply of what we've lost. I avoided it. I sat at the kitchen table instead, on a chair that had no memories at all. I ate dinner under the bright, unflattering kitchen light, as if I were a late-night customer in a small diner that only served leftovers. Sometimes I'd stay there until nearly midnight, cup of cold tea at my elbow, puzzles unfinished in the newspaper, not because the table was comfortable, but because the distance between that table and this chair felt like the distance between before and after. One evening, early in December, the rain was particularly insistent. Seattle had decided to empty out every cloud it owned, and the sound of it on the roof was so loud I could feel it in my ribs. I'd finished a bowl of soup I don't remember tasting, washed the dish, wiped the counter, and then sat back down at the kitchen table as if glued there. The lamp in the living room was on. I'd flipped it earlier out of habit, the way you might turn on a porch light for someone who isn't coming home. From where I sat, I could see just a sliver of its glow spilling across the hallway floor, like a small golden hand reaching around the corner. The rest of the room was out of sight, and that felt safer. If I didn't see the chair, I didn't have to feel its emptiness. At least, that's what I told myself. But grief, as I've learned, is not fooled by doorways or light switches. It already knows the layout of the house. It knows where you used to stand to put your keys down. It knows which floorboard creaks differently without a second pair of footsteps. And on that particular night, it followed me to the kitchen table just as easily as it followed me anywhere else. I remember laying my hands flat on the table, palms pressing into the cool wood, as if I were testing whether the world was still solid. And then, without my permission, the thoughts started. Not loud, not dramatic, just that quiet, steady drizzle of questions that pile up like mail on the counter. Is this it now? Is every winter going to feel this way? Am I supposed to get used to this? Or am I supposed to fight it? My eyes drifted to the opening of the hallway, to that slice of golden light reaching toward me. And for the first time since he'd been gone, I felt something besides the ache. I felt tired. Bone tired, the kind of tired that lives behind your eyes and under your collarbones, the kind of tired that makes you realize you can't keep standing guard in the kitchen for the rest of your life. So I did something small. I picked up my cup, even though there was barely any tea left, and I let my feet carry me down that narrow strip of hallway toward the lamplight. One step, then another. The rain softened in my ears as I moved, not because it had changed, but because each step brought me closer to a different sound. The hum of the lamp, the gentle creak of the floorboards I knew by heart, the low, familiar sigh of the cushion waiting in the corner. Lily wasn't with me that winter. She came later, when the house and I had already done a lot of our hard learning. So it really was just me and the quiet walking into this room. When I reached the doorway, I stopped. The chair was exactly where it had always been. Same fabric, same blanket. Everything looked the same. But I felt different, like someone standing on the edge of a pool they're not sure is warm enough to step into. Some part of me wanted to retreat, to to invent some urgent task back in the kitchen, to postpone sitting one more night, just in case this was the night the sadness would be too much. But another part, smaller, quieter, but surprisingly stubborn, whispered, "Go sit where love used to rest, not to torture yourself, not to replay every detail, just to share space with what was real instead of pacing circles around it." So I walked forward, heart pounding far louder than the rain, and lowered myself into the cushion. The chair let out a soft sound, not quite a creak, not quite a sigh, something in between, as if it were saying, "There you are." I leaned back, feeling the fabric catch against my shoulders, the pillow cradle the back of my head. The blanket brushed my arm, still holding a faint hint of cedar from the chest where I'd kept it all summer. And then I just sat, not bravely, not beautifully, just honestly. For a while, my mind did what minds do. It replayed the last December we'd shared, the way he'd insisted on untangling the Christmas lights himself, even though his hands weren't as sure as they once were. The way he'd fallen asleep right here, in this chair, with a bow stuck to his sock because he'd stepped on it and forgotten. The way his laughter had filled this room so completely that for a moment it felt like the walls themselves were smiling. The ache of it rose up hot and sharp, and then, very slowly, settled, not because I pushed it down, not because I told myself to be strong, but because there was something underneath me, sturdy enough to hold it. This chair didn't fix anything that night. It didn't erase the empty space. It didn't bring back the second pair of footsteps. All it did was stay. Stay when I cried. Stay when I got quiet. Stay when I finally let my head fall back and stared at the ceiling, wondering how on earth an ordinary piece of furniture could feel like the safest place in the world for a heart that had just been broken. That winter, I sat in this chair more nights than I can count, sometimes for only a few minutes, sometimes until the clock over the bookshelf ticked its way steadily past midnight. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, this chair stopped being the place where I felt most alone and became the place where my aloneness felt most held. There's a difference. Loneliness says, it's just you. No one sees, no one hears. Being held even by something as simple as a chair and a lamp and a rainy night, says, "It's you, but you are not nothing. You are here, and here is worthy of warmth." That realization didn't arrive in one dramatic moment. It came the way rain does, drop by drop, evening by evening, each time I chose, despite the ache, to come back to this spot, to let myself sit where the memories were, until the memories started to feel less like open wounds and more like quiet lanterns in the room. Tonight, as I sit here telling you this, I can feel both versions of this chair, the one from that first harsh winter and the one holding me now in this softer December. And if there is anything I have learned between those two seasons, it is this: sometimes the bravest thing you can do at the end of the day is not to push your feelings away and not to drown them in noise, but simply to choose a place, a chair, a side of the bed, a worn corner of the sofa, and let it be steady underneath you while the storm inside you runs out of words. In the next breath, I'd like to talk with you about how this very practice, coming back to the same quiet place night after night, has become a kind of gentle ritual for me now. Not a rule, not a chore, a ritual, something that tells my heart, whenever you are ready, there is a spot in this December home where you can sit and be exactly as you are and still be welcome here. These days, this chair and I have an understanding. It took us a long while to get here. Grief had its season. Fear had its season. Avoidance, oh, that one had a very long run. But somewhere between all of that, this ordinary corner of my December home quietly turned itself into a ritual. Not a fancy one, not something you'd put in a book, just a small, repeatable kindness I offer myself at the end of the day. It starts a little earlier than you'd think, not here by the lamp, but back in the kitchen, around that time when the light outside starts to forget what color it wanted to be. Seattle has a few favorite shades of almost evening. Tonight it's that soft bluish gray, the one that makes the houses across the street look like they've been drawn in pencil and gently smudged by a thumb. I stand by the stove with my little kettle, fill it just enough for one mug, and turn the burner on. Nothing remarkable. But this is where I quietly tell my body, we're heading toward rest now. The kettle, as always, has opinions. It starts with that impatient little hiss, as if it, too, spent the whole day answering questions it didn't ask for. Then it settles, finds its rhythm, and finally that soft rattle begins at the lid, the one I can hear from the doorway, even if the radio's on low. At 63, I trust the kettle's sense of timing more than I trust most clocks. While it warms, I do something simple. I choose my mug, not the chipped one when I'm already feeling fragile, not the big one that feels like a commitment. Now, here's the part I didn't realize was important until I started paying attention. I do not take my first sip in the kitchen anymore. I used to. I'd stand there, leaning against the counter, and drink half the cup before I even decided where to sit. The tea did its little bit of comfort, but the rest of me was still wandering between rooms, between worries, between decisions I wasn't ready to make. These days, I let the cup become part of the ritual of walking to the chair. I carry it carefully, not like it's fragile, but like it's important. A small, warm thing I chose for myself. In the hallway, the house feels different than it does during the day. Quieter, yes, but also a little more honest. Pictures on the wall look less like decorations and more like doors into other years. The banister, if I trail my fingers along it, has a way of reminding me how many hands have steadied themselves there. By the time I reach the edge of the living room, I can already see the lamp's glow spilling softly across the rug. Not a spotlight, a circle, a small island of warm light in an otherwise muted sea. Sometimes, on heavier days, I pause right there at the threshold, not to decide whether I can do this, just to tell myself, this is the moment you used to avoid, and look at you, you're still walking forward. Lily, more often than not, has already claimed her post by the chair. She has a remarkable sense of schedule for someone who doesn't know how to read a clock. She looks up at me when I enter, ears soft, eyes brighter in the lamplight, and then glances at the chair as if to say, your place is still here. I've been keeping it warm. I set the cup down on the small table first, always first. That's another part of the ritual. It's my way of telling my heart, You don't have to carry the warmth and the weight at the same time. Let something rest before you do. Then, slowly, without ceremony, I lower myself into the chair. The cushion rises to meet me, remembering every previous evening I've ever brought to this spot. The fabric gives just enough, a quiet reminder that there is room here for a whole, complicated human being, not just the tidy parts. And here is where the heart usually wants to rush ahead, to replay the day, to jump to tomorrow, to dig through the mental junk drawer of everything I didn't do, or didn't say, or couldn't fix. For a long time, I let it. The chair was where I sat and thought myself into exhaustion. But now we have different roles, or rather, different invitations. The first one is very simple. Feel the chair before you feel the thoughts. I notice the way the cushion holds my hips, the way the pillow cups the back of my neck, the way the blanket touches the tops of my knees with that familiar, faint cedar weight. I let the details arrive one by one. Fabric, warmth, weight, light, Lily's fur against my ankle. Because every time I start with my body, my thoughts loosen their grip just a little. They're still there, but they're not the only thing in the room. The second invitation is this: let the cup set the pace. I reach for the mug, wrap my hands around it, and let the warmth sink into the places that always go cold first. My fingers, my palms, that thin, tender skin just below my wrists. I do not gulp the tea. I do not let it go cold on the table while I spiral. I sip and then pause. Sip and then breathe. Sip and then remember that I am here, in this chair, in this home, in this December night. Not in the worst case scenario my brain likes to stage in some imaginary hallway of the future. Chamomile, honey, warmth, all very ordinary, all sending a tiny signal to the nervous system that says, you are not, in this exact moment, under attack. We forget to tell ourselves that sometimes. The third invitation might be my favorite. It is simply this: talk to the chair the way you wish someone would talk to you. Now, I don't mean out loud, although if you pass my window on a particularly emotional night, you might catch me murmuring to the furniture. At this age, I've decided the line between eccentric and coping well is really more of a scribble. What I mean is, I let my inner voice sound like a good companion, not a harsh critic, when I'm here. If a difficult thought sits down beside me, instead of saying, "Oh, not you again. What's wrong with me that I still feel this?" I imagine placing my hand on the empty cushion next to me and thinking, "Of course you showed up. It's evening. It's quiet. This is when old fears remember where I live. But I am not obliged to wrestle you tonight. You can sit there, and I will sit here, and the chair is strong enough for both of us. Is it perfect? No. Some nights I forget. Some nights I slip back into old habits, scrolling on my phone until my eyes ache, or replaying conversations that happened 10 years ago, as if changing one sentence in my imagination will rearrange the past. But on the nights I remember, on nights like this one, this little ritual changes the feel of the entire house. The lamp's light seems warmer, not because I changed the bulb, but because I stopped using it as a spotlight on my regrets and started letting it be what it is, a small, steady sun for one corner of my world. The rain sounds less like a lonely soundtrack and more like company, the sky's footsteps across the roof, reminding me that not all constant noise is danger. Some of it is just weather being weather. Lily's breathing becomes its own lullaby, slow, rhythmic, honest, a reminder that not everything alive is worried about tomorrow. And the chair, this stubborn, faithful, slightly sagging chair, stops being the place where the day catches up with me and becomes the place where I finally catch up with myself. Not to scold, not to interrogate, just to notice. How am I, really? Where does it hurt tonight? What, if anything, can be gently set down for a few hours? You'd be surprised how often the answers to those questions are simple things, not dramatic, not cinematic, just small, tender truths that don't ask to be solved, only to be seen. So here, in this part of the evening, with my tea half finished, the lamp holding its warm halo over my shoulder, and the rain thinning itself into a softer hush ritual do its quiet work. Chair, light, warm cup, dog at my feet, a body that made it through the day, a heart that is tired but still open enough to be honest. This is not a cure for everything, but it is a place, a real, physical, repeatable place where my evenings learn not to be the enemy. In the next breath, I'd like to sit with you in what comes after, those last soft minutes when the cup is empty, the day has nothing else to ask of us, and all that's left is to let the night itself become a kind of gentle hand on the shoulder, not pulling, not pushing, just saying, "You are here. You made it. Let me carry the rest." The cup is empty now. I always feel a little tender about that moment when the last bit of warmth has left the mug, when the honey is just a faint memory around the rim, and the tea has done everything it can do. There's a small, contented sound it makes when I set it down. Not dramatic, not important to anyone else, but for me, it's like a period at the end of a long, gentle sentence. Here, it seems to say, we've come this far. The room has grown softer around us. The lamplight isn't any dimmer, but the edges of things, the bookshelf, the picture frame, the curve of the curtain, all look a little less sharp, as if the evening has taken a thumb and gently smudged the outline of the day. Outside, the rain has calmed into a fine mist, the kind that doesn't tap at the window so much as rest on it. Seattle is very good at this part, the slow fade from storm to something that feels almost like a lullaby. Lily has claimed her favorite position, curled in a soft comma at my feet, her nose tucked just under the hem of my pant leg, as if she's trying to make sure I don't slip away without her noticing. Her breathing is slow, steady, the rise and fall of a creature who has already given the day back to the dark. Sometimes I envy how easily dogs rest. They don't negotiate with themselves first. They don't say, "Well, I'll relax once I've solved absolutely everything." They just decide the floor is trustworthy, and then they sleep. At 63, I'm still learning that skill, but I am learning, one evening at a time, one chair at a time. You know, sweetheart, if you were to stand outside my house right now, on the sidewalk across the street, you'd see just one small window lit up, a square of warm yellow light in a row of mostly dark houses. From there, it would look so simple. A lamp, a woman, a quiet dog, a December night that seems peaceful. And it is in many ways. But what you wouldn't see from that distance is everything this chair is holding. All the worries that set themselves down instead of staying on my shoulders. All the memories that have learned to sit beside me without breaking me open every time. All the small decisions I had to make to even walk into this room tonight instead of pacing circles around the kitchen. This piece isn't an accident. It's a practice. And that, I think, is the thing I most want to leave with you tonight. Not the idea that my life is effortlessly calm and yours is somehow behind. Not the idea that I've figured out how to avoid sadness or fear or lonely hours. No. What I want is much simpler and much truer. I want you to know that a quiet evening like this, the kind where your thoughts finally soften, where your breath matches the rhythm of the rain, where a chair feels like a safe place to let your heart set its bags down, is something you can build, not in one night, not perfectly, but slowly, gently, the way I did. Maybe you don't have a chair like this. Maybe you have a corner of the sofa that sags a little, or a place on the edge of the bed where you always seem to sit when you're thinking. Maybe it's a spot at the kitchen table facing a certain window, or a folded blanket on the floor near a heater that rattles more than it hums. It doesn't really matter what it looks like. What matters is that you choose it on purpose. What matters is that you let some small part of your home become the place where your evenings know how to find you. You could start very simply. Pick one spot, not the place where everyone needs something from you, not the chair that always faces the television, a spot that feels like you, even if it's just a certain pillow, a certain corner, a certain way of sitting. And then give it a few things to hold. A small lamp if you have one, or a candle, or a string of lights you haven't used since some holiday 5 years ago. Something that glows but doesn't shout. A mug that fits your hands. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be yours. A blanket, maybe, or an old sweater you don't wear out but love too much to throw away. Something soft, something that smells like your own laundry, like your own life. And then, on a night not so different from this one, when the world has taken what it wants from you, let yourself go there. Not to be perfect, not to be wise, just to arrive. Take your warm cup or your cool glass of water, or your hands empty, and sit. Feel the weight of the seat underneath you, the way your back meets the cushion, or the wall, or the edge of the mattress. Notice the light, how it falls across your knees, how it rests on your hands. Let your shoulders drop half an inch, just half. That's enough for a first night. If the thoughts come, and they will, because brains are very loyal to their habits, you don't have to argue with them. You don't have to silence them. You can just say, all right, you can stay here too, but you're going to sit next to me, not on top of me. Let the chair hold some of the weight. It's stronger than it looks, and so are you. Tonight, as I'm sitting here in my own familiar place, I'm thinking of you doing the same in a different city, a different country, another home with its own set of sounds and sighs and little imperfections. Maybe your rain sounds different. Maybe it's snow outside your window, or hot wind, or city noise that never fully goes quiet. It doesn't matter. What matters is that somewhere inside that soundtrack, there is a small, chosen space where you can sit and let the day be done, even if nothing is solved, even if tomorrow still looks big, even if your heart doesn't quite know how to rest yet. Some nights, I'll be honest, I still feel a little afraid of the quiet. Old worries are clever. They know all the back roads into our thoughts. They knock just as I'm turning off the radio or lowering myself into this chair or setting the cup down empty for the last time. But now, instead of believing that their presence means I have failed at being peaceful, I take it as proof that I am human, that my heart still cares deeply about the things that matter. And then I look around at the lamp, at the blanket, at the worn patch on the armrest where so many evenings have passed through. I feel Lily's warmth against my foot. I listen to the rain and the hum of this old house that has taught me over and over that it can hold more than I thought. And I remember the chair is not asking me to be fearless. It is only asking me to be here, just here, breathing, safe enough for this one moment. You don't have to build a perfect ritual overnight, sweetheart. You don't have to feel what you think you're supposed to feel. All you have to do on this evening and on the next one and on the ones after that is give yourself a place to arrive. Let the chair remember you on the nights you forget who you are. Let the light remind you that there is still warmth inside all this quiet. Let the small sounds, the rain, the heater, the steady breath of whoever or whatever shares your home become part of the lullaby you didn't know you needed. I'm going to rise from this chair in a few minutes, turn off the lamp, check that the door is locked. The little routine of a woman who has lived many Decembers. But before I do, I want you to feel something clear and gentle from me. You are not strange for finding the evenings difficult. You are not weak for feeling lonely in a quiet room. You are simply a person whose life has been full enough, deep enough, that silence has things to echo against. And that, my dear, is nothing to be ashamed of. So tonight, if you can, let your own body find its chair, its corner, its small square of safety. Let your hands hold something warm or soft. Let your breath slow down just a little, and trust, even if only for these next few minutes, that the night is capable of being gentle with you. You don't have to earn that gentleness. You only have to allow it. All right, sweetheart. I think this evening has said what it needed to say. The rest belongs to your pillow, to your dreams, to the soft part of you that is ready, finally, to be quiet. Rest well tonight, sweetheart. Good night. From me, Maggie.